Hello and welcome back to Thirsty Thursday. This is our weekly news show roundup in which we invite a guest host to come and dish on the news headlines of the week with us. So today we have with us friend of C plus P, Colleen O'Connell-Campbell, wealth advisor and host of the podcast I'm a Millionaire, So Now What? Welcome, Colleen.
Hello. I'm so grateful to be here. And just before we actually dive into things, I want to make it super clear to the audience here at Thirsty Thursday that these are truly my own opinion, whatever we're going to talk about today, and not a reflection of the institution that I happen to have my practice held at. So, and hopefully I won't get too serious and it'll be fun, but I definitely have some opinions to share. So thanks, Susan, for having me.
Awesome. This is an opinion show all the way. These are our thoughts on what's happening. Is our effort to sort of editorialize some of the news of the day, because not all of us have curated sources. That said, some of the things that we wanted to touch on today are delicious. And there's some discussion and debate to be had in a few areas. So we can get right into it. I wanted to start, Colleen, podcasting, that's the hill that we would die on around here. You certainly agree. So we usually follow Spotify, because watching Spotify is a great way to tell what's happening in the podcasting market. And at this time of year, for the last few years, they've put up this sort of recap. They're calling it wrapped this year, where you get to see your behavior. So these big platforms have algorithms and they're serving us things based on our behaviors. So why not use that, right? And they're doing it really well. So they give you the insights in terms of what are the top songs, top podcasts, how many hours you listen to, all of that kind of stuff. And I thought it was good. And from my perspective as well, the way the information was presented, like it's graphic, it had clever headlines. It said, for example, like one podcast lived in your head rent-free this year, and it was the 4 a.m. report.
And well, go figure, Susan. Like, I'm not sure. Does that mean you're an egomaniac or a narcissist?
I think so.
Like, all kidding aside, it probably makes the most sense that you're spot checking your own podcast.
Quality control meets narcissism.
Yeah.
So to sort of like go back to last week, where we had the Thirst Awards, the unanimous winner of the category of podcasting was Spotify, and now you can sort of see why, right?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It has me really thinking. I've been thinking about this a lot. Do I make the switch? I'm all in with Apple right now, so. But it's come up a few times. We just got Sonos, and Sonos is more connected to Spotify than Apple. So I don't know.
That's why I made the switch, because of the speakers. It was just easier to link them to Spotify, and then eventually the whole family went there. So yeah, it's always a sort of decision, isn't it? From there, moving into a space that I know that we share some commonality, because there's a sort of financial aspect to this and a creative aspect to it. The world of NFTs. And Budweiser, who's in this headline right now, is just the latest. Pretty much every week around here, the last few months, Colleen, we've got some sort of NFT story of how people are creating NFTs, how that's like Adobe has put it into their software itself as convert to NFT as an end output, and the implications on intellectual property and creativity going forward. So tell me your thoughts.
So first of all, as we've talked before, I'm fascinated by this idea of NFTs. And, on I'm a Millionaire, So Now What, I've brought in some blockchain, cryptocurrency experts, but I'm still trying to wrap my head around it truly. I mean, I have art in my house, not what's behind me is just a canvas piece, but I have some original art in my house painted by a local artist. And that I understand, art collecting, like the physical. But I am having a really hard time wrapping my head around the long-term value of something that is digital, that it can be easily copied, even though the NFT is about having the ownership. It's hard to figure out. But hey, world is about evolution, and good on Budweiser. I mean, for really jumping into the new age. I mean, this is the beer company with the Clydesdales and the wagon, right? So fast forward, great to see them, jumping into this new field.
Yeah, I think quite a lot of brands are sort of figuring out how to work it in. And right now, to my mind, it's still in that sort of hype phase where it's like, put it out, FOMO, get it. It's going to settle into a place potentially where it will become more sort of integrated into the mainstream. And, from a marketing perspective, this and the next couple of things that we're about to talk about, I think points to the fact that things have changed hugely. Like marketing is no longer about like that spot on, TV or that radio ad or, that brochure that you handed out at the trade show.
Talking about trade shows, I talk about Spotify and how I ran into them at a trade show here in Ottawa years ago before they became what they are. And I kept this card, and I've been thinking about, is there a way to put this card, not just like in a photo album or in a shadow box? Like, is this an NFT-able thing?
I think so. My thoughts.
Anyway, it's just funny. It's just interesting. You wanted to talk about that today, so I pulled that out.
I love it. Yeah. So that's on the NFT front. And then from there, I know that we read this little piece where it talks specifically about hiring, but I think it goes a lot further than that. It's how the hiring is moving to the metaverse, and how sort of the implications of this becoming immersive environments, essentially, right? Like where you are able to meet with people and conduct interviews or whatever it is online. And now, as of a few weeks ago, when Facebook changed to Meta, I think for what it's worth, that put metaverse on the mainstream
on the map. Yeah.
Yes, because suddenly everyone's like, wait, what is metaverse? Let me take it a little bit more seriously. It's no longer something for the gamers and that sort of thing. So what are your thoughts? Like, do you see the
Yes. The first thing that came to me when I really started to think about this, because it's actually not something that I'm thinking about frequently personally. It's just, but when I am thinking about it, the first thing I'm thinking about is like, what is in this environment, what is real and what is make believe? And it, brought me back to flashbacks of the Matrix movie, right? What's real and what's not. And the other thing is that from what I can tell, I think people still crave the face-to-face. And I think there is, and we were talking about this before too, about how there's this new way we're going to have to maybe adjust because of the digital nomads being comfortable in that area. But how do we trust that if you're hiring in this environment where it's avatar-like, how do we know what's really behind the avatar? But then when I thought about it a step further, where I could see great benefit for businesses is in the training element, right? Especially when it comes to things like physicians and surgeons and dentists and engineers. Like, what if we could create an environment to test out design and simulate an earthquake or a major flood and put in the algorithm, all of these things with the design of the bridge? I mean, I have no idea. This is all coding stuff that goes on behind the scenes, but wouldn't that be fantastic to be able to do that and simulate it rather than build it and have it collapse, right?
Yes. I think you're spot on. There's so many applications. Like we said, this thing talks about hiring, and that's truly valid. I think as we start to hire Gen Z, you've got a whole different level of behavior. So when people say, if the metaverse, I point them to my 10-year-old who spends most of her time on Roblox. And I'm like, there's no if around here. It is, it's like, it already is. Maybe we're not and to your point, I think it hinges on the trust, right? Like, I mean, we are at a sort of a generational divide. Like when I was 21 years old and I started with my first job, it was a totally different set of parameters about what I had to do, like show up in a suit and, learn how to have social skills face to face. And now that's a totally different set of things. And I think we do need to learn how to get in there. We do need to deploy it.
And we will adapt because, you know, frankly, I hate to age myself, but I don't even think I'm that old, but we had a rotary phone at home. We had a party line. We did switch to touch tone, but now my most recent move, we don't have home phones. We are all on our own device, but like, look at how far we've come, and the speed of change is immense. So it basically, you know, the way I see it is, yeah, I think some healthy skepticism is okay, but I think also realism and optimism are needed elements, and it's going to affect everything from marketing to day-to-day to training, and just, I think it's just be open to what
I think so.
is coming.
Be open to the possibility. I think anything can happen, and we're like, I know that we deal with a lot of small businesses, both your business and ours, and one of the cool things about small businesses is that we're miles ahead of like more sort of organizations that are larger and take a while to move, not as agile, right? So so I think for us it's important to be like, how does this break down for us? And you know, even something like Microsoft Teams now has avatars on there. You could join a meeting as an avatar. Now that might be annoying to some people, but maybe some people feel more comfortable in that thing. So I think it also has that element of accessibility and inclusiveness for different types of ways of showing up in the world. And I'm here for it, Colleen.
Well, actually, you know, come to think of it, right? That could be an interesting way to remove some of the biases in the hiring process. If you don't actually have the avatar, you're looking at the skills and the communication.
Yeah.
You know, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. So you just kind of bring that in. It just went, you know, tweaked another way that could be very helpful, you know, as opposed to hindrance.
I think so. And I think that if we just change the ways in which we are assessing it, like where will the trust come from? The trust will come from delivering the things that you said you would deliver, perhaps. And maybe you need to make a clearer picture of expectations versus delivery. And I definitely think it's just a matter of better translation. Like, we just have to take the same skills that has brought us so far as humanity and then apply it to another way. I mean, the internet came up like suddenly and we all got really used to that.
Yeah, a little too accustomed. Now it's like, I don't know the answer to that. Google.
Don't say anything. It's going to start speaking to you.
See?
It's happened a few times where it'll chime in. Don't leave me out, ladies. Okay, so on to some Canadiana. So this story like warmed my heart in so many ways. Like, this is just some of my favorite people, like Ryan Reynolds and anyone from Schitt's Creek. Like, I'm all over that. They were given the Governor General's Performing Arts Awards last week, and then, you know, there was performances. So Colleen, I'm going to invite you to chat a little while I scroll to this.
Sure. Well, you know, I love to see that Catherine O'Hara, you know, Kevin, like iconic Home Alone, we're near Christmas, so it's perfect time to do that. I was dying to do that, by the way. But, you know, I loved Schitt's Creek, and, you know, interesting story. My husband and I took a trip to California, to San Francisco in 2016, and we did a wine tour, Sonoma, Napa Valley. And we were in it was a small tour, small bus, Americans, there were a German couple, a gentleman from Japan. And I don't know how we got onto talking about television shows, but, you know, just kind of a natural conversation. And I remember that Scott and I were like, it's too bad you guys can't get this show. There's this amazing Canadian show. And you know that guy, Eugene Levy, you know, the one with the eyebrows there? Like, that's how we describe it. There's this amazing show called Schitt's Creek. It is hilarious. It's too bad you guys can't get this show. And then, you know, fast forward, I would love if I could connect with those people. I didn't keep their contact information, and find out if they're part of the cohort of Americans that have totally embraced Schitt's Creek, right? Like,
correct. Oh, I love it. It's such a delightful show. It's It's so awesome. So Ryan Reynolds as well, like from a marketing perspective, like he's just incredible what he's done with so many things like Ottawa Public Health and that Bruce tweet and how he got involved in that. It's just a whole other world in the way in which people are communicating with one another, right? It's humorous, it's witty, it's sharp.
Yeah, he is in my mind, he's quintessential Canadian, disparaging, self-disparaging,
Yeah.
and yet boundaries, right? Like if you heard him talk on, was it Jimmy Fallon? I don't want to get the show wrong, where he's like, don't come, stop coming to Canada. Stop doing that. Every time there's an election in the US, there's this whole group of Americans who decide that, or talk about that they're going to come and move into Canada. And he's like, you have to stop doing that. Do you remember that? It was kind of recent.
Yeah.
But he reminds me a little bit of my dad in a way. His wit is very dry. His comedy is very dry and witty. And intelligent, like there's an intelligence behind it that I just so appreciate. And then from a marketing perspective, I mean, he just knows how to pull the things together. Yeah, and he's a celebrity. And from the quote unquote, I'm a millionaire, so now what, which is my podcast, which is about being unapologetic about growing wealth and being wealthy. And the so now what, so now what? Look at all of the amazing ways he's helped organizations and individuals, right?
That's right.
Kids, reconciliation. I don't know, you name it. If you watch the video, there's just this role of organizations and causes that he has supported in one way, shape, or form. So so excited that he got that award.
That's, you know what? Yeah, I'm not able to download that video and play it, but people should go and watch it. It's on Twitter and YouTube. He in his own in his own accounts, you'll find it. There's parts of it where he gets quite emotional and misty-eyed about it, and
actually partially speechless, which is like, how is that possible with Ryan Reynolds? Like Stephen Page did a great job, like an original song, right, that he put together, which is so Canadiana in itself as well. We really need to appreciate what we have coming out of our own backyard. Sometimes gets overblown from a marketing perspective with, all of the feeds that we get being so American based, which I appreciate. I appreciate that as well. But, we do have our own unique offering here. And so, I'm both of those people from performing arts standpoint, over the top. They deserved it.
100%. Well said. Catherine O'Hara, her wigs, like during the performance, he put on the wigs as well, right? And it was like amazing, everything about it. I mean, it's like we talk about needing to be entertaining because levity is much needed in this moment, right? I mean, we could all use a collective chill. And kudos to people like this for regularly showing up and making sure we get that. So on to some more sort of social media news. Many people know that Jack Dorsey, Twitter's CEO, resigned earlier this week, and he's going to be sort of replaced by a new CEO over here. His name is Parag Agarwal, and a few things have started to change even immediately. Like as soon as the announcement was made, I think we'll go less into Jack Dorsey and his sort of, some people love him, some people not so much, but there's plenty of that out there. But I wanted to focus today on a privacy policy change, Colleen, and this relates specifically to images on Twitter. So if you look at this announcement from Twitter, they've said sharing images and the way that's going to be governed is going to change. And on the surface of it, that sounds like a good idea. Great. You shouldn't be releasing any images that don't belong to you, right? And yeah, excellent. That sounds good. But then you break it down, and that's when you start to see that, well, technically, this would mean you're not able to share images like, let's take the incident of George Floyd or, Ahmaud Arbery or any of those things. You wouldn't be able to share some of that on Twitter and get movements like the Black Lives Matter movement moving, or even from like a police perspective on the other side of it. Like if you had to put out missing persons stuff, that wouldn't be possible anymore, according to these guidelines from Twitter. So that's, I think, a whole can of worms. I don't know how that's going to go.
Yeah, to me, it's really confusing. I didn't read the full underlying document, but I did read the article that is trying to dissect that for us. And certainly there appears to be some really problematic language from a legal perspective. I think, maybe they're kind of corporate heart is in the right place in wanting to protect privacy, but I think they're opening themselves up for, opening a can of worms that it might explode in other ways. And like, how do we really define what is an image that we own? So, you could get into some really ethical areas, like just because you take a picture of your child, you don't own your children.
You
You're
don't.
your children's guardian. So who owns the image? Do you or does your child? Like, you could really dig into this here, right? Like, where is the line? I don't know that it's clear.
The Nirvana album cover with the kid in the pool. That kid is suing the band for this purpose, because it's like, yeah, sure, you bought the image from my parents, but that's kind of, my body. Yeah.
So I don't know. And then from a marketing perspective, yes, Twitter was all about the characters, and I'm a wordy person, but I also am attracted by certain images, right? The picture that will draw me back to the word. So I don't know what that means for Twitter as an actual platform, if you take away or reduce the value that an image can bring. I don't know. Like, I think
it's what my advice to small businesses in particular is just, be aware that these are the changes and of what you're putting out there. It's always safest to obviously use your own images or things from Creative Commons. I know that places like YouTube, for example, are extra specific. Sometimes if you upload something and the music is not yours or the image is not yours, it'll immediately tell you. So, being aware, I think, is what we can do for now, and then we'll see how it plays out. So on to the next part. We'll touch on this section really quickly. More Canadiana around here, but this is awesome. Do you want to talk a little bit about the Shopify thing? As the proud owner of a future NFT of Shopify.
Yeah, we're jumping ahead, but now you're manifesting that it's going to have to happen, right? So really interesting stats coming out, right? A lot of questions about how much people are spending around Black Friday. It's always a big thing, and most of the headlines are saying that shopping is down a bit, except on Shopify. Like, it was bigger and bigger and bigger numbers. And so what I am getting from that, when I look at it and I think about it and I digest it, I think what's happening is this intersection of the theme of, kind of the shop local in a way, shop directly the brands and that you really want. But with the convenience of, clicking online and, the biggest place I think that most people will go to is Amazon, right? Arrives at your door. But I think that what this is saying is, as consumers, with our, where we spend our money that's a tool that we have to actually speak. It's like a superpower, really. And so I think what's happening is we're seeing consumers, be empowered to support the brands and local, quote unquote, smaller businesses that they want to support. I think it's amazing. That's what I see from.
I think you nailed it. It's that Venn diagram of wanting that convenience and also being able to support local. And in the middle there is Shopify, and there you have it. I think that's really great. And we also wanted to really quickly touch on some stats around Black Friday shopping this year, and then Colleen had some thoughts on how to spread your business out across the year. So essentially, one of the numbers is that shopping in store has really gone down. It's gone down by about 28%, and that sort of raises the questions about, like, is it, if you can shop online, then that could happen anytime. It doesn't happen to happen on one day, in one place, and then the implications of that are really cool. So talk to us, Colleen, from a business perspective, what we can take away from something like that.
Well, frankly, from a business perspective, it's a whole lot healthier for you, for your business, for the culture and your employees, if you're actually spreading out your revenue over the course of the whole year. So if instead of having this big chunk come all at once, where it means you're working umpteen additional hours and maybe you're having to hire extra people for just that period of time, it's much better if, think about like just a core subscription base, right? Which is a regular annuity, right? Even if your business is something that means that maybe me as the consumer, I don't personally need something every single month, but over the course of the year, spreading that out. I also think that we are going to continue to see a bit of a trend here. So again, my opinion, and it might not be next year, but I think be interesting to come back and hear this in, maybe 5 years or 10 years. But I have the sense that the more and more we have access to all the things we want all the time, the less and less we're going to have these big lumpy periods of time. Like think about Halloween candy, for example. At one time, you could only get those little Halloween bars, or even like quote Christmas, right? I think about Christmas when I was younger, or Christmas when my parents were younger. There were certain treats and things like that were only available at that time of year. But now you can get these things all year round.
Yeah.
And so, it's just, it's maybe not as important to have those big lumps. So I would encourage businesses to think about that. And also, it is a little bit of a constructed time of year. So you know what? Construct your own.
Construct other times of year. Yes.
Yeah.
To remove that ebb and flow. I really like that. So on to our last story then, really quickly. You taking from your holiday points that you were making there, we're continuing into the thick of the holiday season. Obviously, all the brands are coming out with their ads and their communication. And one of the things that we're going to see this year, and people like Starbucks and Target are leading the way on that, is that the actual material is a lot more inclusive. Like regardless of the type of family that you are and how you're constructed, whether racially or not, you're going to see something that represents you a little bit. Your lived experience will probably be a little bit more visible on screen, which, I'm here for it. Some people might call it performative, but I think it's a good step forward, as long as there's some backup action, and that's not just purely tokenism, right? So what are your thoughts, Colleen?
So to your point about that, again, I think it's great to show the world, how we all fit in, and at the end of the day, though, I think until we see the changes happening within each business, until we see a reflection of different genders, different ethnicities, even from the standpoint of I'm not even sure how to describe this, but able-bodied versus not able-bodied, and I hadn't thought about it, but the article that you shared with me that we wanted to have a bit of a discussion on, even colorblind, like I didn't even think of that, right? So, but by having different people who are part of the actual organization making the decisions, I think what we will find over time is that will become a true natural reflection in the marketing. So right now, I think the pendulum has swung that it is a little bit of a tokenism and what have you, but sometimes these things have to happen. You have to have that really big swing in one direction. And then, but we, in order for that to really stick and be meaningful and really authentic and in integrity, is to have the senior executives and the teams that are part of putting all these things together, then that are also diversified. There's inclusion. I'm not sure I'm using all the exact right terminology there, but I think you get the point, right? You get the point, right?
Yes.
So what what you're putting out is because that is what's happening.
It's a true reflection of what your insights are. I agree. That's well said. So on that note, folks, those are the stories of the week that we wanted to dish up for you. Thank you so much for joining us, Colleen. Always a pleasure chatting with you.
It was fun. Thanks.
Bye.